Base has dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It's a Tuesday. It is a huge day worldwide in World Cup qualifying. We'll set the table for you throughout the show on what is coming up. The first games that you might want to have up in addition to us are going to be at 9:45 from Asia. Two games that will decide the playoff opponent for Australia. The winner of that will go on to play the fifth place team from South America. Australia is locked in out of Group B. Group A, if the United Arab Emirates is able to beat South Korea, then they will be in the playoff. If they don't and Iraq beats Syria, then Iraq will be in the playoff. Justin Merrim is on the bench to start for Iraq in this big game. 9:45 kickoffs in those. You got games in Europe. You've got games in Africa. You've got games in South America throughout the day. We'll talk about all of that. Dylan Butler will join us at 9:30 to talk U.S. men's national team and MLS as we head back into a full weekend of Major League Soccer. Coming up, Atlanta United will be in our nation's capital to face DC United at Audi Field. We'll get into what to expect out of that as we go this week. We'll look at the three games from last week with Dylan and see what else is on his mind in MLS and USMNT circles. Some news off the top to get started. We've talked about the whole Super League not dead thing, UEFA, all the clubs fighting one another, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Nasser Al-Khelaifi of PSG, their president, he started to take more and more power in Europe, and he was speaking today and says that UEFA competitions are as much as 39% more profitable thanks to the collapse of the Super League project. I think the correlation there might not necessarily fit, but what he's getting at basically is that the ECA, the European Clubs Association, which has been fighting with UEFA over the years about making more money, the collaboration now that in a lot of ways came because of the attempted breakaway from the Super League clubs. That collaboration has resulted in more revenue, more value across the top competitions. Now they're going to play more games too, and that needs to be understood. Is this idea that UEFA was on the shining horse and the hero riding in to save the day from the dastardly Super League? Yeah, not so much. They want to make money too. They're just trying to do it a little differently and keep some of it. So they're going to start the expanded Champions League here very soon. And one thing is, he's right. They are working together more, the ECA and UEFA. They did an open and competitive tender for the sales process for these, brought in more money than they had been. That's good. That's cool. But the UEFA competitions are going to head more into the direction of Super League ideas. The one that they have not gone for yet, but it still has been talked about and continues to be, and probably continue to will be for a while now, is those guaranteed spots for heritage teams. That's been the line that has not been crossed yet by UEFA. It has not been ruled out by UEFA 100% either, so keep that in mind. But they're going to play 10 games in the group stage as opposed to 6. It's just going to continue to expand. Out of Scotland, they're kind of happy because it looks like with these expansions, the Scottish champion will go straight to the group stage in 2022, 2023, along with coefficient changes and all of that, rather than having to go through the qualification process and oftentimes ending up in the Europa League. So you're going to see a bigger, more robust set of UEFA competitions. Some people are happy about that. The previous Super League teams are still not happy and are still going to continue to rally people to join whatever their thing is these days. So this stuff isn't going away. It's not solved. It's not fixed. But Nasser Al-Khelaifi doing a little bit of a victory lap, because what he did in terms of politics was actually really shrewd. Juve and Agnelli had really been overseeing the ECA for a long time. They had all the power. These big clubs had the power. They ticked everybody off by going down the other road, trying to create a super league. Al-Khelafi stepped in and said, no, I'm going to fix this from the UEFA and the club side. And he has to a degree, and he's assumed that power vacuum because now those clubs that tried to break away are not all that welcomed to the party when it comes to UEFA, when it comes to the ECA. So it's an interesting political dynamic as much as it is a business dynamic. And all of that trumps the actual soccer dynamic. So that's where we are right now. But this is getting talked about a lot today as Al-Khelafi is talking about it, and it's getting a lot to say. I don't think anything's really changed. Super League's still out there, and until UEFA really makes a decision on how they're going to proceed with heritage teams and further expansions of the Champions League and Europa League and all that, this is going to continue to be in the periphery.
And we all know that when you are trying to state a case, if you can find a way to make the numbers look good on your end, then obviously you can sit there and make that early push in the PR battle. And when Al-Khelafi came out and said that we've got this basically a 40% rise in revenue, the notion that, yeah, okay, you've got the 40% rise in revenue, but the point that you made was key. You got more games that were being played. Therefore, more games should equal more revenue. More teams, more games, more revenue. And so I thought that was an interesting play by Al-Khelafi off the top, because what on the surface, without doing any real kind of a deep dive and investigation, can you sit there and make your case? You sit there and say, hey, we're bringing in more money. And that way you can sit there and basically broad brush the whole thing and sit there and say, okay, you make this grand statement about more money, and everyone gravitates naturally toward that as an idea of success. But I think that those that make the deeper dive and can understand that because you have more teams and more games, naturally you should have more revenue. And I think that that's something that we need to keep in mind here in all of this. It's not just because you have all of the folks that are in place. It's because you got to play more than any other scenario. So I would suggest to folks, when you see something like this, when somebody sits there and says, yeah, we've got more revenue, take that extra dive, go the extra level and figure out why someone is saying what they're saying. In Al-Khelafi's case, yes, it was great that you're getting more revenue, but it's because you had more people playing out there that was the why.
Well, that's what some people will say, sure. And we'll never really know. If you had the same competition format, would you get 40% more? I mean, Al-Khelafi will tell you, yeah. If you had more games, does the corresponding rise equal that? I don't know. But of course you're going to spin it. I mean, welcome to life. Mm-hmm. You're going to say, which is a factual statement. I mean, that's the thing. It's not even spin. It's maybe leaving part of the data out, right. But it's not spin to say that your rights fees have increased. That's accurate. That's true. They were already going to plan this increase in the competition. That was pre-Super League. So, we'll see how it all shakes out. I think the biggest thing about it is, as we've said for a while now, the push in world soccer is not going to go away with more big teams playing more big teams. It's just the nature of it, because that's where the money is. And we can, put a hashtag up and put a banner up against modern football and all of that. But the majority of people who are going to watch games are going to watch big games with big teams playing big teams. The numbers back it up. What's going to draw more, an English League 2 game or a big Premier League game? The big Premier League game. I mean, it's just that's the nature of why we all do this stuff and what we enjoy and what we get into. I enjoy going to watch a grassroots game. I absolutely do. But one of the reasons I enjoy it is it's smaller. Like, it is smaller. It's not on the same scale. That's okay. You can enjoy both. You don't have to enjoy one or the other. But the big clubs look at, just do the math. It's not hard. If you are a Liverpool and you have a match with Chelsea at home. You're hosting it. Forget everything else. Just your game day experience. You're going to make more money from hosting Chelsea at Anfield than you are Norwich or West Brom or whoever you want to put in that situation that's not one of the mega clubs. You're going to make more money. There's going to be more people. You're not going to have people say, I'm not going to go to this game, or I'm going to give these tickets away. Or you're going to have more people, probably going to spend more money, buy more stuff. They're going to be more excited. Your TV rating's going to be bigger. All of those things that affect the bottom line are just, that is the reality. You can't get away from it. And we've got to stop sticking our head in the sand about it. But how can you create balance? Because that's what we do love from a very big picture standpoint about the game. You need all of those different teams. You need the domestic teams to be strong. You need competitions where they can meet. Cup competitions are great for this. You need these things to have the balance, because if you only play other big teams, then you lose the balance. Then those games aren't quite as meaningful. You want more of them. I understand it fully. And from a business perspective, yes, you're going to want to do that. I get it. But if you only play those games, it's not special anymore. It's always going to be more special. And this is the thing that you do have to, I think, grasp with this too, because I've heard that argument consistently about it. And it's like, oh, well, that's why you don't do it. No, because if your two options, and in some leagues, these are the options. If you're in Ligue 1, for example, and you're PSG, and you have maybe 3-4 big league games a year, that's it. You want to play as many big games as possible. You don't care if that means you're not playing your local league anymore. You don't care. You will take it. If you're Liverpool, you're in a different conversation, because even your lesser interest games domestically are still pretty good. They're still pretty good. You don't want to lose that, have that drop off by only playing big teams. So you're trying to find balance. UEFA is going to go to an expanded set of competitions with more games. That's a step in, I think, a logical direction. Now, the format, I don't know how it's going to work out. It's honestly, at this kind of a scale, I've never seen anything like it. The 10 games, you're all basically in one group. Everybody who's in the group stage is all in the same table. You're playing 10 games against a mix of teams at different seed levels. It's a really interesting idea. I don't know how it works out. I don't know how well it's received. You probably could have done an easier way of expanding your group and getting to 10 games and just having 6-team groups and playing 10 games that way, home and away. That would have made more logical sense to me. Whatever. I want to see how that's received, but having 4 more group stage games against fellow big teams at the Champions League level, I don't know how much it really does at the Europa League and the Conference League thing. I don't know if that's going to change much. But at the Champions League level, it is a logical step. And it is a logical step in the right direction, I think, for these big teams. But is 10 enough? Should it be 12? Should it be 14? Should it be 16? What does that look like then with domestic competition, then with domestic cups, all of those different things? Where is the line? Because there is a line, in my opinion. I don't think you can make it work to where there is no domestic competition for these teams and it is only Super League or Big League or whatever, big games. I don't think that works, because then you lose some of the effect. Still good. It's still probably better, but how much better? There's a line somewhere in there where there's balance. And that's what these clubs have to find, where they get the best of both worlds, because that's how they're going to make the most money. And it's going to be the most compelling for us. I'm not going to shy away from the fact that money's going to drive this, because it is. Because if you're a fan of a big team, you can't shy away from demanding your owner spending all the money on all the players you want. And sometimes people try to play both sides of it. Nah, that doesn't work. You want money in your team to be able to buy the biggest players in the world and have them come play for your club. That's what most fans want. No problem with that. That's cool. So how do you make more money? These are some of the things that can be laid out for that. How do you create the format that guarantees balance? Balance is what it comes back to. And you're going to get more of that coming from the UEFA side than whatever breakaway kind of idea would happen. I 100% agree with that. But don't be distracted by how bad you dislike Super League and think UEFA is a perfect partner here either. No, they want money too. And they're going to have to find this balance with their competitions and domestic, what they do overseeing and bringing all the European nations together and all of this. You're going to have a lot of people who have their own interests. Nothing wrong with that. That's their jobs. But if they're going to be in these roles, and Al-Khalifi is one, and look, maybe he's going to represent everybody's best interest better than Agnelli did. It's not really saying much, but I think he might do that. You're going to have to find the balance between all of it. And it's a big, important thing for the global game because this is the biggest competition at the club level in the world. That's a league. Leave Club World Cup out of it. It's bigger than Copa Libertadores. It's bigger than anything in CONCACAF, Asia, Africa. It is the pinnacle. These clubs are the biggest in the world. So what is that balance going to end up being that helps them grow further, which should better the game, which should be good for everybody, rather than tear things apart? And that's the balance that has to be struck.
Because let's just continue with the Liverpool example here for a second. I know that there are folks who are Liverpool fans that still have that special place in their rivalry with Everton because it's just across the park. And you can't, there will always be that desire to continue to have those rivalry matches and all the other matches against the teams that mean that much in your Premier League competitions, even though in recent years the win-loss margins are somewhat stilted in your own favor, but you still have that desire to sit there and go up against Spurs. You still have the desire to go up against an Everton. You still have the desire to go up against the Manchester clubs. And then you go below that, and then you get into all of the other regional rivalries that have been a part of your competition as far back as you can go. You can't lose that as a part and parcel to going up against the bigger names in the continent. And I think that...
But Liverpool wanted to lose that, John.
They wanted to lose Everton?
Was Everton part of the Super League?
No, but what I'm saying is that from a domestic, you want the balance, is what I'm saying. You don't.
Yeah, no, we want the balance. I'm saying you're making Liverpool like they have all these ideals at heart. I don't think they do. Honestly, like no, of course, and if they can play Everton and play these others, yes, they'd probably take it. But if they have to pick, I don't.
If they have to pick this, no, Barca, PSG, they want the heavyweights across the board.
That's the whole point. Your Evertons, your Tottenhams, and that level, fine. Anything below that, I honestly don't think Liverpool cares. I don't think there's another regional rivalry that they really care about protecting. They've got to play the politics here. I mean, what you're saying is where I'm at. It's the same thing we're talking about here. They want to play more big games because that's where money comes in. Of course, you have for some of these teams, Barcelona has Espanyol. Real Madrid outside of Atleti has other rivalries in the Madrid region. Like you have other rivalries outside of big teams for most of these teams. Not all of them, but most. But these clubs would sacrifice that if it comes down to playing more games against a Real Madrid, a Bayern Munich, the biggest clubs in the world. They would. They would. Just wait. Just wait till you get into a situation where you have expanded Champions League and Liverpool plays at Bayern on a Wednesday. And then the next week they are hosting Real Madrid and they've got Everton slapped in between. Which game do you think gets sacrificed in terms of your first choice?
The one against Everton, and you're going to see a lot of young kids going up against an Everton side.
Yeah, and that's what'll happen. So, like, no, there's nothing other than cash that's going to drive some of this and importance. And look, that's the nature of it. There is a balance to be struck. And I just keep looking at it and wondering how many more European games can you add on top of, for England, they have the Leagues Cup, which some teams already punt on.
Mm-hmm.
But you have that and an FA Cup and your league. where is the line just in terms of a calendar? Not even getting into number of games as much as a calendar of how do you make it fit? You have the international calendar as well that's going to be revamped starting in 23. That has to get sorted out. There's a lot of moving parts to this that are outside of UEFA and the Clubs Association, the ECA, and all this stuff. There's a lot of elements that are going to affect it, but it is all about balance for me. If you're Liverpool, if you're able to eat filet mignon every night, it doesn't feel as good a month or two in. You do want that balance. You do want to have the game against Everton mean something. But if it's sandwiched between two huge Champions League games, it's going to get sacrificed to a degree. Yeah. And you'll still have all the conversation about, it's a big opportunity for these boys. Yep. We don't like the blue team across town. Yep. No, we don't like them at all. These guys, they're going to defend the shirt and blah, 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 blah. Wave your flag and yippee, yippee. That's all going to be there still. But for that casual fan, which, like it or not, is a huge part of the financial outcomes for these teams. The hardcore fans are going to watch all the games. They're going to watch the Gummy Bear Cup. They're going to sometimes watch the U23s. They're going to get into all that. Some of those casual fans who will buy the Mo Salah shirt are going to be like, well, Mo Salah's not playing against Everton? Yeah, I'm going to watch something else.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's not going to play this week because he's going to play on Wednesday. I'm going to go to the game on Wednesday. I'm not going to go to this. And that's part of this conversation too. We can't stick our head in the sand about it. But that's a lot of stuff that you got to find balance in. And we'll see if they can do it. Because you got to balance greed. You got to balance making more money. You got to balance rising costs of player acquisitions, salaries, all of it. Just rising costs of operation. You got to balance a lot of losses over the last couple of years for these teams. You got to balance projecting ahead to where I think it's a safe projection that transfer revenue is going to drop, because I think you're going to see more players play contracts out. You got to balance the value of your domestic competition, domestic cup competition, international competition. That's a lot of things that don't always align that you're going to have to figure out. It's going to be fascinating. MLS is going to get into that conversation down the road. Leagues Cup is a step in that direction. CONCACAF expanding Champions League is a step in that direction. There's a lot of room for growth in this area. I'm waiting to see what South America does with some of this. Does the Libertadores expand a little bit further? Because you have an even more exaggerated situation with some of this when you get into South American teams. And you have your heavyweights that maybe don't have as much domestic competition. Maybe it's a little bit closer to France in terms of domestic competition. They would probably welcome more Copa Libertadores, Copa Sudamericana. But how do you then still find that balance? Because there is the value in the domestic competition, but maybe it's lower. It's a lot. CONCACAF and MLS and Liga MX, you already see the push for more interaction between those two. Leagues Cup is going to be that. It's a unique solution to that problem. All right. CONCACAF, as they would obviously say, is like, yeah, that's great. Leagues Cup, we're going to work with you because in the end run, we're going to get some benefit of this too. But you can't leave Joe Public out. That's a club in Trinidad and Tobago, by the way. You can't leave Comunicaciones out. They've got to have CONCACAF Champions League. It's got to grow too. If you're going to grow Leagues Cup and you're going to make your money there, we'll work with you. Winner can come into our competition. That's great. But our competition's got to be a big deal as well. All these different parties to the conversation and all these different aims. It's a lot to balance. And you're in kind of a new time period or a new era coming after this World Cup, starting in 2023, where you're going to have expanded World Cup in 26. You're going to have the expanded European competitions coming, expanded CONCACAF competitions coming. You've got Nations League competitions now that are growing in maturity and importance. You've got a new calendar to create. You've got to push for fewer internationals for national team games. You don't want the friendlies as much. You want games that mean something. There's a lot to get into that, and FIFA has to oversee that. But they have to have the input from UEFA, from CONMEBOL, from CONCACAF, from Africa, from Asia. They have to have all of that and find a way to try to make it all fit in a calendar and a cycle coming up for the 2026 World Cup man, that's a lot of stuff you're trying to get into that paper bag. It's going to be tough. From an MLS perspective, which we got Dylan Butler coming on here in just a second, when that calendar comes out, that's going to really help you define where Leagues Cup fits into your schedule, when your schedule starts, when it ends. This year and really in the lead up to this, I think we talked about this in 2019 when the format started to come out. It's like you could see they had to get to where they could have an earlier MLS Cup in 22 because of the World Cup being where it is in the calendar. But after this, does the MLS preseason start in mid-January from now on? Does it start in late January? Does the first week of games, is it the first week of March? Is it the last week of February? Where does Leagues Cup fit in? Because that's going to take a month out. How many other international breaks do you have? Because hopefully fewer. Okay. Then where do your playoffs fit? How do you make your playoffs not have some of the disruptions that we've seen in the past? And then where's your MLS Cup game? Because then that starts your offseason and that gets your cycle going again for the next year. I don't really know what 23 looks like yet. There's Open Cup as well. U.S. Soccer's got to kind of wait and see how everything else goes and then find spots for Open Cup. There's a lot to navigate. And I think your MLS calendar next year is going to be affected by all of these other things globally. So whatever that calendar looks like will be fascinating as well. Let's see what Dylan Butler thinks about this. So Dylan, we started talking about the Super League, ECA, all the talk in Europe about how their expanded competitions are going to look, and kind of brought it to this region with MLS in 2023, with Leagues Cup coming online in a big way and taking a month out of the season, getting the World Cup out of the November, February cycle going forward, and just what the calendar is going to look like for MLS in 23. It's going to be different because of Leagues Cup, because of, just kind of where things are going. I don't know if we're going to start around the same time and maybe end a little bit later, or just the cycle gets moved around a little bit. 23 is going to be a brand new start for MLS in terms of a calendar.
Yeah, no, it's going to be, I hadn't even thought about it, but yeah, I think it's going to be different. It's going to be a new look. And it's weird because I feel like, and a large part of it is the global pandemic, but we've had no consistency with a calendar. I feel like for like 3 or 4 years now, right? Where, we were trending to earlier starts than ever. Then it was like later ends than ever. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm sure it'll look different, just like it's been looking different. It's I feel like the off season, and we've talked about it before just because of news and stuff, but has been shortening. But it's not just an MLS thing, right? That's a global football thing.
100%. Yeah, this is going to be weird. I think where they put, it's almost like dominoes. I think where Leagues Cup fits into the calendar between the two Mexican seasons, and is it July? Is it July crossing over into August? I don't know. And then you start to base around that, because it won't be the midpoint for MLS, but you want it to be kind of as close to the midpoint as you can, so it has that natural feel to it. But it might be almost 2/3 of the season, then a break, then the final third, like a final playoff push, and then into the postseason, which could be really interesting from a momentum standpoint.
Yeah, like a horse race, right? Like down the stretch they come. Like, here we go.
We'll get Dave Johnson to cut all the promos for all the PA when it comes to, and it could be a marketing opportunity for the leagues. So the playoff push presented by, whoever pushes things for.
There we go. Let's sell that, because I mean, you'll get teams coming out of Leagues Cup that'll have momentum that maybe didn't going in, and you'll get teams that have an awful time in Leagues Cup, and then you're like, well, wait a minute, now is this going to be a problem for them going back into league? It's going to change the dynamic in a big way.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I can't wait. One thing that we all are very hopeful for is fewer games during international breaks. We had some this weekend, some interesting ones. The Charlotte game, Charlotte and Cincinnati. I think a lot of people kind of threw their hands up on this one, didn't know where it would go. Charlotte wins back-to-back. Karol Swiderski did not go to the Polish national team. He stayed in Charlotte. That got some things going on social media. Yeah. But what a performance from him.
Yeah, listen, he's been it's always so, we never know sort of how these guys will come in and how quickly they can adapt and adjust. And it's a very short, very small sample size, but he has been, worth the money, right? Like, he's been fantastic. The first goal in particular, I loved it because it was an 11 pass sequence, right? Almost, dare you say Barcelona-esque, right? Like,
yeah.
From the back with a high press, although watching again, Cincinnati's high press was not quite like Union intensity, like what they're kind of trying to bring, obviously.
A little more Swiss cheese style.
Yeah. But, it starts in the back, it builds up, you switch the field, you come back to the other side, and a great finish at the back post. And, he gets his brace as well in the later on as well. So, yeah, I think another good performance to build on for Charlotte. But that's the kind of sequence that's how they want to play. Now, will they do that consistently through 32 games, through 90 minutes, every game? Obviously no, right? But that's that's the example, right? Like, that's how they want to, or how they would ideally like to play. And it obviously worked out there for that goal.
And Dylan, I know that when the season started, once again, dealing with a very small sample size, I know that you and I discussed Wooden Spoon and Spork. Yeah. Have your opinions changed on Wooden Spoon and Spork after this first little bit of time?
Yeah, Cincinnati, maybe I might be believing in them a little bit. I'm not sure if Vasquez's start is sustainable, right, for a long stretch. I kind of feel like, though, the Spoon, at least early on, might be going to South Beach, right? Like, I don't know. Cool. Like, it's seeming like we might have an exchange there from, they're going to take it off the wall. Like, they're going to have to pry it off with a hammer because it's been hammered in there for a couple of years and deliver it down to Miami.
Yeah, Miami's in that spot right now. The 1-point teams through 4 games. It's Miami, it's Vancouver, it's Montreal, it's San Jose. Montreal won't be there. I don't see how they're at the bottom.
That's a CCL, that asterisk CCL.
Agree. And we'll talk about kind of what looks next for them. But Vancouver, I don't know. I honestly don't. I haven't seen much of them this year, to be honest.
Brian White hurt. I mean, again, we're not giving excuses, right? But Brian White hurt. Ryan Gold hurt. That's like. Unfortunately, I think so much of their success is tied to those two guys.
100%. I think that's key. San Jose, I could see in this mix. I just don't know what.
By the time it gets out to San Jose, the spoon will be broken. Like, it's like
San Jose would take the spoon and smack somebody over the head with it. There's just no telling what San Jose will do. But yeah, Miami's a good shout. I mean, the teams ahead of them. You get to those 4-point teams, Nashville won't be there. Toronto won't be there. New England won't be there. Seattle won't be there. NYC won't be there.
No.
So, yeah, you can already start to see a little bit of separation. Sporting Kansas City got off the schneid a little bit with a win. I still don't know what their ceiling is. I think they need a 9. They probably should be calling Caleb Porter and Columbus about Jossie Zardes. But they did find a way to get a win and look decent doing it against RSL.
Yeah, that was they get a late one, right? Johnny Russell, who that's one of the things that we kind of looked at. They were so successful last year because Johnny Russell, Daniel Shalhoub had career years. Kyrie Shelton was very good, but you can't expect that from Russell and Shalhoub. Like, you can't have a career year every year, right? Like, that's why it's called a career year. So to get him a goal in that moment was big for them. But I'm not like I don't like. They need a 9. I don't know if you're getting that production again. They still haven't figured out the 6. So there's still so many questions with Sporting for me.
That's actually a really good point. Do you go trade for a 9 or do you trade for a 6? Which one is the priority?
You just flip it, right? Because it's the same if you go upside down.
I don't think you can find somebody who can give you both, though, sadly.
Sporting's world is upside down this year. Yeah, I'll give you credit for that one.
Yeah, right.
I'm not sure which one they prioritize. I don't know which one fixes more.
I think you flip that number up when it lands, like heads or tails.
All it.
When it lands, is it a 9 or a 6? Either or, we need it. So
hey, at least we know there's a good 9 on the market, at least being reported by Tom Bogert. I have not heard of a top 6 on the market, so go get Zardes and figure out the other one in the summer, I guess.
Yeah, and I feel like it's almost easier to get a 9 than a 6, right? Because I think 6 are so they're both valued positions, but
yeah,
I think to get a really effective 6, you hold on to that guy, right? Like that's why we're so surprised even that an Ozzy Alonso was allowed to kind of freely move, right? Or Sanchez Ilie to LAFC, right? Like you hold on to those commodities when as much as you can. Here in NYCFC, there was a surprise when Ring got let go, but obviously they solved that, with kind of that mix they have in the midfield now, where Sands was taking that spot last year. Morales is in that role. Parks kind of comes in as the 6/8. So, but yeah, the position is so critical that I think it's hard. It's a harder find. I think that's why we kind of see it more. I think the international market to bring those guys in.
Yeah.
The late matchup on the weekend was Portland hosting Orlando, and Jose Carlos Van Rankin just gets an absolutely silly second yellow, which creates a man advantage for Orlando, but they can't take advantage of it. Portland ends up getting an equalizer on a penalty, and what I wanted to ask you was about the home team and Portland, and it seems that while being down a man, it did free them up to do things offensively that they weren't able to do in the first 75. You shouldn't have to necessarily rely on having only 10 guys to try to chase an equalizer at home against an Orlando team that, if I remember correctly, has the worst statistic for wins, losses, and draws for any Eastern Conference team heading west. What does this say early returns on Portland? How concerned would you be if you were a Timbers fan about what you haven't seen in the first handful of matches?
I would say I might be frustrated, but I'm not necessarily concerned because, we've seen it with Seattle and we've seen it even last year with Portland too, right? Like they're a team that's shown you can have a blip or a slow start.
Zombie Sounders, Zombie Timbers. Is that where we're going with this?
And then you just get hot, right? So we didn't around this time last year, or even a couple months, going even into the summer, we didn't think that the Timbers would be that team, right? And they were. So now you can't always rely on that, obviously, right? Yeah. But if you asked if I was a fan, I would be like, I'm not. I'm a little bit irked, obviously, because I want to see my team win, but I don't think I'm like, torches and going to Merritt Paulson's house just yet, right? Like, I think it's still because of making the cup run last year. Even though there's some important pieces that aren't there anymore, I'm not pushing that panic button yet.
Yeah, if there's anything about Portland that I'm concerned with, it's only 6 goals in 5 games. It feels like the attack is not there yet, and I don't know if it's a personnel thing or if it is just bad luck early on. Still kind of early to tell. Let's get into U.S. men's national team, and we'll take a look at MLS with the upcoming weekend at the end. You were dead on 2 things that you said last Tuesday. Yes. You were dead on the lineup selections going to Mexico. They should go for it. And you were dead on Tyler Adams being able to handle the pressure and not pick up that infamous CONCACAF yellow and get suspended. It worked out. You're not completely done yet. You still got work to do. You can't lose by 6. But it worked out about as well as it possibly could going into those 2 games.
I think so, right? Because I think you voiced it, and certainly not just you, a lot of fans, the concern was playing at altitude, playing at Azteca. If you play your best 11, will you not have legs coming for arguably the most important game. They didn't. They did have tired legs, and they admitted it even in the training leading up. But I think what you saw was just like an intensity, an attitude, right? Like that was going to get, even though there might have been a bad touch, they were going to win the ball. They were going to get the 50-50. They were going to do anything that they could to win that game. And I thought the first 45 minutes was the best that we've seen a Greg Berhalter team play. And they followed up professionally in the second half as well. Right. So terrific win, obviously. And yeah, it's not a job not done yet. Like I watching the post-game show, hearing the fans, singing about going to Qatar. I'm like, I'm still a little bit antsy because of Kuba a few years ago, obviously, but
it's such a weird feeling because I mean, it is, you have to lose by 6 to not go. That's pretty rare. I don't think there's many.
And you still ask Malcolm Butler about rare.
Say it again, Dylan.
The playoff, so it's not even there.
Exactly.
It's not as dire as it was 4 years ago, but because of 4 years ago and just how badly that affected us mentally, you're still like, it's not done. Wait for the final whistle. Okay, now.
Yeah, it's this weird thing. I think they brought a banner out qualified, and it's like, no, don't bring that out yet. No,
you heard Ballistic was like, we didn't even know what it said, and once they did, they put it down. But listen, I think one of the thoughts that I had, and it's not just me, and it's been shared, but what's one of the biggest lasting images that you had from that defeat in Trinidad, right? For me, it was Christian Pulisic on the floor crying, and to be fair to him, even though he's gotten so much shtick from social media and the fans, like that failure wasn't on him, right? Like he came in, he was trying to be the savior at a very young age, right? So I feel like tonight, and I'm sure the directors and the producers, they're gonna have the cameras on him, or I should say tomorrow, cameras on him to show him celebrating, right? Like I want to see that going from Pulisic crying to his celebrating, and listen, he put his team on his back, right? Okay. First hat trick, he was phenomenal. Obviously 2 from the penalty spot, but you still have to finish them. And he was great. The third goal, just absolute filth. I mean, both touches, right? You could say the first touch was like, he mishandled it, but I don't. Please, incredible stuff. One thing I saw it this morning on social media. I don't know. I should have shared it for you guys, or I might have retweeted it. But did you guys see the little sort of mashup of Luca De La Torre?
Yes, I did see that.
Best teammate ever, dude. That was hilarious. That was so great. Shielding and shielding Ferreira.
Those little things are really important in a game, and Luca De La Torre is a guy who, he's on the fringe of the team. That little stuff goes a long way.
You need that when you get to the World Cup as well. So
you do. You need guys who understand those moments. I think what you said, it's really important to note. They knew they had some tired legs. They knew they would have tired legs with the strategy they picked. They had them. And they bet on being able to overcome that. And look, one of the ways you overcome that is you don't leave the game until late. You take care of business early. And they came out with such an intensity in Orlando to be able to then be professional at the end, to be able to handle things at the end.
Yeah, no. And, you feel on the other side of things, I do feel for Annabelle Godoy, man. Like, the second one was soft for me. Right, like I don't know if I call that a PK.
Second one was soft. First one was an easy one. He should have gotten a card.
Yeah, and how about that too from Zimmerman, right? Like just the wherewithal in that moment when everything is sort of chaos around you to just hold the ball, right? Like and be like, let's wait. Can we go to VAR? Like making sure it's not a quick restart, so they don't miss that window of opportunity. So. I thought that was a great heads up play from Zimmerman that obviously ended up, paying off in the PK. I thought he was great.
He was
Zimmerman. I thought Jedi Robinson was great. Right. Obviously Pulisic is man of the match. a lot of very good performances on the day. I thought Kellen Acosta down in Mexico was great. We didn't speak after that game, but I thought he was really, really good in the Weston McKennie role, right? And then Gio Reyna doing like Maradona things, right? Like if he finished that off, I feel like put the lights off, we're done, game over. Like you can't. There's no way you can get a continue the game after that. So.
We have a score update in the Asian World Cup qualifiers. Syria just jumped out to an early lead on Iraq. Iraq has to win and get help to get into the playoff. And
Justin Merrim.
Yeah, he's on the bench to start, and they just gave up a pretty bad goal. It's been all Syria in the first 5 minutes. They've got to win, and they've got to get help. So it's not a great start for Iraq at all.
Yeah, we know that. What that kind of feels like from 4 years ago.
Yeah, that pressure. And look, I mean, that's probably what is affecting them early on. You kind of know those things coming in, and these games get weird. And look, I hope Wednesday you have enough of a cushion that you can deal with a little weirdness, but it's just such a difficult feeling for a player in these games, knowing that I've got to do this to go to a World Cup. If I don't go, I'm not going for 4 years at least. It's tough. And you always see it in these games. Like somebody will either rise to the occasion and have an incredible day and they become a hero, or you see somebody completely wilt under the pressure, and you just see these weird breakdowns in moments of games. It's so hard to quantify the amount of pressure and what it means.
Yeah, and again too, right, with what's at stake, right? This isn't just a league match where you get them back in week 4, week 5, right? This is 4 years in the making, which obviously just completely magnifies it. A whole country kind of on your shoulders if you start to think like that. So it's but that's also the beauty of it when you do succeed, right? So
I want to
from Jonathan Bornstein, right?
Yeah.
Now, and we all know that international pundits outside of this particular hemisphere will sit there and perpetually try to find ways to poo-poo MLS talent on an international stage. Yeah. But I think that, and I'll bring up the Tom Bogert number again, when it comes to having your center backs as Miles Robinson and Walker Zimmerman, 7-0-1 together in their last 8 at the back for the United States. And I think that this particular run by the United States national team speaks to the development of MLS. What's it been like, Dylan, to see the MLS talent be a part of the discussion, be a serious part of the discussion for the advancement of the U.S. team having the ball at the 1 yard line and just having to push it in here in this last match?
Yeah, it's great too, because think about the storylines of the conversation sort of even earlier in qualifiers, right? How do you not have John Anthony Brooks in there? Like, right. He's the most experienced. He's playing on a big level, on a high level. He's playing in Germany. And we haven't heard boo about John Anthony Brooks, right? These last couple days, because Walker Zimmerman has been so solid. He's clearly, I think, the one. I think the 1A is Miles Robinson because of the way they play together. And then I think even there, I think Aaron Long steps in front of John Anthony Brooks as well, right? So
very possible.
I think when you maybe start to build a depth chart and you build a 23-man roster, and if you've got 4 center backs, I would think maybe he'd be there.
Yeah.
But again, Berhalter laid it out and said, listen, I need my guys to play in a certain way, and these guys have, and John Anthony Brooks hasn't. And it's not just the center back tandem, right? Like, I don't know if anyone gets poo-pooed on more on social media, even by MLS fans, than Paul Arriola.
Mm-hmm.
And he was phenomenal, right? On Sunday, scores a goal, sets up a goal as well. We talked about going into the Mexico game about form, right? And club form, and Jesus Ferreira had it. So did Paul Arriola off their last game that win against Portland. So, and they both showed up in a big way in Orlando. So, yeah, listen, Kellen Acosta, again, right, filling the role for Weston McKennie. So I think it's all about that mixture. And if he was healthy, would Matt Turner have been in goal? Possibly, but he's certainly pushing Zach Steffen. So I think it's a marriage. I think it's a marriage of the domestic players and the European-based players. Certainly, the biggest names you would argue, right, are the Pulisics, the Adams, the McKennies, the Reynas, right, and those are the guys who play in Europe. But I don't think you go to a World Cup, and I don't think you have some level of success in a World Cup without the MLS players.
Yeah, you'll see a mix. I think you'll see a mix with this national team for a long while. And it's a good thing. It's a healthy thing.
Yeah.
You have more options if you're one of these national teams, and there's a lot of them. And look, a lot of the South American countries, Argentina, Brazil, those guys are all playing overseas. You might have one or two domestic players. It can be difficult for a manager to bring a group together and get a good look at what his squad is with all these guys in all these different places. You see the flip side where you see some that are almost all domestic, and you don't have as much variety in the type of player. You don't have as much variety in the kind of tactical backgrounds they have. They're all pretty much the same. What the U.S. has with both, and honestly, players in all the different position groups in both. Some are domestic,
Yep.
Some are international. You get a lot of variety, a lot of competition, and I think more options for the manager. And that's a good thing. And that last part is probably the most important part that MLS has had a huge impact on, is developing the overall pool to where it's bigger and it's deeper than it's ever been. It's not a walk that a guy at Wolfsburg is just an automatic. He's always there. It doesn't matter if he's playing badly or not. That doesn't happen anymore.
And that's the thing too, right? Like a lot of the guys that we spoke about or I mentioned who are the big talent guys, where do they develop, right? Like Adams in the Red Bull system, and McKennie, even though he didn't play for FC Dallas, right, was in the academy. Reyna was in the NYCFC academy. So I think that's a great sort of banner for the league to fly, right? The flag to fly. And it continues. I virtually every, I think Brooks might be one of the only exceptions, really, right? Like in Europe, and Pulisic, obviously, but
and even Pulisic, was here for a decent while of his youth.
I feel like if the Union Academy was a little bit more what it is now, he probably would have been there.
Yeah, he would have. He was at FC Delco, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think they do affiliate stuff now. They didn't then, and they didn't have that relationship. Yeah, absolutely. I think he would have at least been affiliated with the Union Academy if he was, like that age now.
Mm-hmm.
It's important, and it's important, and it's something you see with the Argentines. Those clubs do fly that banner when their young kids maybe play a season in Argentina and they leave early, and that creates some chaos. Some of those guys don't make it because of that. Some do. But if you developed at, Bonfield and you go over to Europe and you become a star, that's a huge thing. I mean, Newell's will always take credit for Lionel Messi, even though he wasn't there past the age of like 12, 13. It's a huge part of it. And now you've got Greg Berhalter with a ton of different options. I would not be surprised to see a number of MLS players in the national team for the World Cup. I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple that maybe we haven't seen as much of yet. He's going to have the opportunity to see an entire MLS season.
Yeah,
a guy like Jordi Mihailovic is one who could really, continue to elevate his game. There's going to be some other young guys that are going to get an opportunity to maybe turn his head the rest of this year if they clinch qualification tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that's the next sort of interesting lesson, right? Is building out your 23-man roster. Like, what does that look like? What does the depth chart look like? I think that'll be a fun exercise for all of us, really. Like, who makes it, right? Like in that, because also, again, you can't just bring all your youth guys. You need some experience. So like a DeAndre Edlin, right? I think is probably pretty important, just because of his experience and that brings value to a team, right? The number 9 position still super important. It's probably a really big long shot, but as you mentioned, you have a whole MLS season. What happens if Josie Altidore is like the comeback player of the year, right?
Yeah.
Could he maybe earn a spot? And
because you never know what happens between now and then.
Right.
If people get hurt, and we see it every time. I mean, think back to 2010. Edson Buttle and Robbie Fenley had huge MLS starts to the season, and you had a bunch of injuries. So Yeah, they got the opportunity. They got the call.
Yeah. Wando, right, was
Mm-hmm.
in there as well. So I think, well, look, it's obviously a good problem to have, right? Because it means that you're in the World Cup. So I think, Berhalter will have his work to do, right? And figuring out those numbers, right? Not making that Landon Donovan-esque omission as a mistake, right? Will be so important as well.
Okay, I got a couple games in MLS this weekend to ask you about quickly. New England Revolution hosting the Red Bulls. Revs still reeling after CONCACAF and losing to Charlotte. Red Bulls, I thought, started great. I didn't think they played well against Columbus. I thought that was a struggle for them.
Yeah, no,
what
I
do
agree.
You think about these two?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, I would say in general, I think games at Gillette don't lend itself to the beautiful game, but neither do Red Bull games. So it's going to be an ugly one. It's going to be a lot of fouls. Certainly, Red Bull will look to sort of halt what New England wants to do. So, but for a result standpoint, I think it's a really interesting one. I think it's super important for the Revs to start to get back on track, right? Like, it's one thing to blame, the CCL hangover, but at some point you've got to get beyond that, right? Like, it wasn't like they had a super long run in the Champions League, right? Like, they literally didn't play their first two games and then they lost. Right. So, I think a lot is on them, and same with the Red Bulls, right? Like, I think why we're interested in this game is because of what it will mean for both teams coming off of bad results. So let's see what version of the Red Bulls, who they are, right, in this game as well. So, definitely intrigued by that one.
Philadelphia hosting Charlotte.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, listen, Philly's the best team in the league. I mean, that's the statement, right? Like, I think they show that against NYCFC. Charlotte, though, is bringing some of that confidence. Swiderski, whether he should be with them right now or not, is probably a whole nother story, but he is.
Yeah.
And now they've got back-to-back wins, right? So they're going to come in confident. I mean, wow. Can you imagine what that would mean for them to get a win there, right? A third straight against the best team in the league. I think that would be quite a statement.
Yeah, that would be huge. DC and Atlanta.
Yeah, they play each other. That is accurate, yes.
What do you think about DC? Because I don't really know what to think of them. They haven't progressed since last year, in my opinion.
No, they haven't. I don't really rate them. I don't know. Like, I don't. I love the idea of Losada coming in, and I was all about Losada ball, and I don't know if it's a personnel thing or if that way that he wants to play, if it doesn't necessarily fit his personnel, I don't know, but I've not been impressed by them other than like a stretch of games. I want to say last year, a small stretch of games that I'm not. Big for Atlanta, certainly, though. Like, you need to get these points against the DC team. So again, are we talking must win in late March, early April? No, but those are 3 points they should get.
Those when you look at road games, and it's tough to win on the road in this league, when you identify games that you're like, yeah, these are 3 points on the road that we should be taking, you have to pick them up.
Yeah. No doubt about it.
What about you, John? What's your game?
Okay, weekend? I'll go dealer's choice, Dylan. I've got two that you can choose from. Either the anticipated craziness of San Jose hosting Austin, or
what time is that game? Is it MLS after dark?
It's not.
No, it's MLS after sunset. It's 7:30.
That's a shame.
Eastern.
7:30 Eastern. I don't know why San Jose is doing this to us.
Or the last game on the board completely, Portland hosting the LA Galaxy. Dealer's choice.
Oof. Wow. Well, the good thing is you can watch both.
That's true.
and I probably will. But yeah, how about Portland? How about Portland, LA? Right? Like I feel like those Sunday night games or those last games generally bring something. Like it's always kind of high entertainment, right? And I feel like these teams also can kind of bring that. So I think that would be it. I'm disappointed that's not San Jose. Like I think if you told me that was San Jose at like 10 o'clock or 10:30, I'm like, absolutely, 100%. Let's go get the Monster Energy drink, because that's going to be crazy. So, unfortunately, that's not the case. So
yeah, San Jose and the bright sunshine just doesn't really have the same effect.
No.
I'm not as into it. What else you got coming up this next week, Dylan? How many different sports are you calling games for?
Just one.
Just on lacrosse?
Yeah, man. Just did a game yesterday with was it 31 degrees, like 21 wind chill. That was harsh. I got a Friday night game that will be cold, I think, as well. A Saturday morning game. So
man,
busy week here. Yeah.
Jeez. And you do have a really good piece. We talked about it this morning on Richard Sanchez. That was a great profile.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I it's one thing to tell the story of like the guys who are the super elite and playing all the time and in their national teams, but I just thought it was like a really interesting storyline, right? When I spoke with him, and it was one of those fun things where I didn't necessarily know where we were going in the conversation. And it was it was like maybe a 45-minute conversation with him. But then, you just kind of get into things and like, his aunt working at the car dealership in Van Nuys where Kevin Hartman shows up. He takes a picture. Kevin Hartman's his goalkeeping coach now, right? Like, he was too small and maybe too young to be on a team. So his dad's like, all right, I'm making a team. Let's go.
Yeah. I've seen that many times.
And obviously too the dual national thing, right? Like where he lived in California, he's American, he was born in America, but his heart and his inside is Mexico, and he explained why. And the feeling of watching Mexico against Brazil in his first match at the Rose Bowl with 90,000 people there, I think it's and then obviously he walked through again the U17 World Cup and his experience there and what that meant to him, and my one question to him that I was fascinated by was like, do you have regrets? Because it's one thing to like he was the guy, right? Like after the U17 World Cup, and he had opportunities, and he goes to Tigres, it doesn't work out, obviously, and you kind of look at each stop where he hasn't really had a lot of opportunity to play, but even there, man, he was like playing for Tuca Ferretti, training with Gignac and Hercules Gomez at the time, and playing for Peter Vermees and having the opportunity in Chicago. Like he doesn't have like it all. There's learning experiences from everything, and I think that's one of the more valuable things that I took from the story. Yeah,
it's a great piece. Check it out. I've retweeted it. You can find it on Dylan's timeline, Dylan_Butler as well. We've retweeted it from Soccer Down Here. Great profile, Richard Sanchez with the LA Galaxy. Dylan, man, thanks for the time. Appreciate it. We'll talk next week.
All right, buddy.
Be good.
Dylan Butler. Again, make sure you are following him, Dylan_Butler on social media. John, tell us about our good friends over at Eliminize.
I can certainly do that. Eliminize service, proud sponsors of everything SDH. QR code over my left shoulder for those of you watching on Twitch. For odor-free, clean, fresh air, one place you need to go. It's Eliminize service, deodorizing enclosed spaces like houses, apartments, and condos. Eliminize has created a customized solution that eliminizes all organic odors, including those like pet cigarettes and food. Realtors and property managers use Eliminize service to eliminate bad odors to help them sell or rent those facilities that much faster. It's a turnkey process, makes it easy to work with realtors and property managers, kind of the environment we like that these days. So it's a very green way to get rid of odors without any kind of toxic residue. Different than the masking agents that we have under the sink, because those masking agents, when you spray them into the air, just covers up the odor, doesn't attack the problem. Eliminize does exactly that, a proven scientific formula that destroys odor down to the molecule. Pricing, one of two ways, whichever is easiest for you, either by the cubic foot or parts per million, offering results in 24 hours or less. If you have any questions, frequently asked or otherwise, go to their website, eliminize.com, but do us a favor here at SDH. Go /Atlanta after the .com so they know what part of the world that you are reaching out from. So, ELIMINIZE.com/Atlanta, Lemonize.com/Atlanta for odor-free, clean, fresh air. The Lemonize service, proud sponsors of everything SDH.
Thank you to Lemonize. Thanks to new partner for our live shows, Kaiser Permanente. They will be with us when we are at Elsewhere Brewing, not this week, but next week on the Thursday, on the 7th. Trending to be a very big show at Elsewhere. So go ahead and mark that one down, April 7th. And if you missed it from the weekend, you can check out on our podcast network an interview with Greg Garza from our show on Saturday at Georgia Alliance. Talked a lot of Atlanta United about the last match, about what's coming. Really good conversation with our good friend Greg Garza. Went about 30 minutes. So check that out on the podcast network. All right. Couple of bits of news as we get into things today. You got the World Cup qualifiers all day. We'll lay that out for you here in just a bit. Right now, Syria is leading Iraq 1-0. UAE is scoreless with South Korea. If the results hold, then the United Arab Emirates will play Australia in a one-game playoff, with the winner of that playing the fifth-place team out of South America, which will be determined tonight. Keep you posted on that. It's in the 26th minute in the Syria-Iraq game, and both of those are on Paramount Plus. You can watch right now. Some TV updates from Stephen Goff of the Washington Post. We don't have the English language numbers for CBS Sports Network for the U.S.-Mexico game on Thursday, but on Univision, it drew 3 million, which is a huge number for a match on a Thursday night with a 10 o'clock kick?
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty big number. Sunday, we don't have the Spanish numbers yet, but on FS1, USA, Panama, 1.036 million. That is a huge number for FS1 with their penetration numbers out there. That's a big, big number for the U.S. against Panama. So good TV numbers there so far. Couple of other things that have popped up. There are some reports out of Italy that Weston McKennie's injury is healing up a little bit quicker than expected. He might be available at the end of the season for Juventus. Not bad. Could be available for the final 4 games, according to some reports. Okay. I mean, they need him. They could use him. So it's not going to affect anything really big with the national team, although it could when you look at what is this summer for the national team. You get everything done and you qualify tomorrow. You're going to have an opportunity potentially to play some big, high-profile friendlies against teams. It's not just for cash, although that's going to be part of this conversation. It is also for preparation. And I think, in my opinion, you're looking southward. You're looking at Brazil. You're looking at Argentina. They have a game booked with Italy and London, the Finalissimo with the Copa America and Euro champions. But you're looking at teams like that, maybe bring a big European team over who has qualified or missed out. Hey, call up Italy, bring them over. Mm-hmm. That's in the summer. And if McKennie's able to get back into the mix with Juventus, then you would think, would be able to take part in that. And that would be huge for team building. Because it's going to be a different flow to this preparation for a World Cup for everybody. But for the U.S., it's going to be very, very different because they've typically liked to bring guys together for as long of a period of time as they can. You're not going to have it. You're going to have the league seasons run up until 2 weeks before the first game of the tournament. That's not what we're used to. MLS will end a little bit earlier, so you'll be able to kind of start a camp with MLS guys. Probably call in some guys to help the others prepare, which is an awkward situation, but it's probably the best thing that Greg Berhalter can do. And then you're not going to have a lot of time. So you got to take advantage of the summer. You've got to take advantage of the window in September, which you will have. We'll see what the strategy is for this from U.S. Soccer and how they try to handle preparation. Wherever you can get your core group together between now and the World Cup start, you've got to take it and you've got to take advantage. And if McKennie can get healthy and get back in, come in, Neil, come in. Kevin, when I say for cash, I mean, you're going to schedule friendlies that are going to make a lot of money. You're not going to schedule a friendly against Who's a good ranked? You're not. Here it is for the U.S. A good game would be playing Belgium. You're not going to schedule a friendly against Belgium if you can play England, because which one are you going to make more money against? And this is U.S. soccer, and you need the money. You just had 2 years where you lost a bunch of money. So, yeah, it is a balancing act, as pretty much everything is in the game. But you're not going to schedule good games over high-profile games that will bring you more cash. No, you're not going to pay anybody to come play. That defeats the whole purpose of all of it, Kevin, because you're going to have to pay somebody weak to come in and play, and you don't need weak games. You need big games. You need good games. You need to be tested. Because you're not going to be able to in the run-up. Think about previous World Cup cycles. You bring the group together, you run a send-off series, and you do want a couple games in there that you're building momentum. You don't have that luxury here. You're not going to be able to have a send-off series. In my opinion, you're going to have probably a friendly or two for the domestic-based group ahead of going to camp. And I wouldn't even bring like your Pulisic's and McKennies and the guys who are playing in Europe here and into Qatar. I'm setting up camp as early as I can over in that region. And when guys get released from their clubs, they're coming to report to camp there. It's just what you got to do. It's going to be crazy. Yes, Burned, the U.S. women playing Uzbekistan is not exactly appealing in any sense of anything. It's not going to be a good game. It's not going to really attract much of a crowd outside of people who would go see the U.S. women's national team play anybody. It doesn't do anything. I don't know what the purpose is. I mean, outside of just getting some money for a friendly just because you can, because the women's national team will draw some people who will come out and see it, but it's not going to be a good game. We have an equalizer for Iraq, 1-1 in the 31st minute. That's not enough for them right now, though. I should have hit my breaking news sounder. It's not enough for them right now. They are back to where they started, 1 point behind UAE, but they have leveled it against Syria. It is 1-1 in the 31st minute. All right. Other bits of news today that we got to get into before we get into World Cup qualifiers, because that's all coming. Yesterday, Colorado Rapids got Gustavo Vallecilla in a trade with Cincinnati. It was a big trade. It was an expensive trade. $400,000 of GAM in 2022, $400,000 in 2023, $50,000 more on performance metrics if things are met, 10% of his future transfer. They also send $450,000 to Aucas, his previous club. I guess that is whatever, and Cincinnati must have negotiated this, which good on them. Whatever sell-on fee that Aucas had for anything Cincinnati would do, they must have got Colorado to pay that. So you're bringing in Gustavo Vallecilla to Colorado for 1.25, 1.3 if you hit everything. That feels like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That feels like a whole lot. Okay. I haven't seen it yet to say he's a $1.3 million player. All right. You are losing Austin Trusty in the summer. Remember, he's going to be an Arsenal player after the summer or during the summer. You brought in Abubakar Keita. He had a knee injury, he's out for the year. So you did have to go get somebody because you'd already lined up the replacement. Man, it feels like Cincinnati got themselves a deal here with that much money coming in. They get, to be 100% clear, they're not getting 1.3. They're getting 800 and maybe a little bit more. Columbus, Caleb Porter sounds at least somewhat positive that Lucas Zelarayan will be back for them this weekend. He was hurt in the end of that Red Bulls game. They said 1 to 2 weeks, and it is possible that he is back. It's sounding more positive than it looked at the end of that game, because that did not look good, and Columbus Crew fans had to be freaking out because you don't have Lucas Zelarayan, your season's not going anywhere. Sorry, he is everything for them. Couple of things on the rumor and innuendo front. Maurizio Pochettino has been touted as, quote, more real than ever of going to Manchester United. Depends on which one you talk to, because then other places are saying, no, they're going to hire Erik ten Hag. And then Louis van Gaal is saying, no, Manchester United's a commercial club. They're not a real football club.
Don't go there.
And he worked there for a while, and it didn't end well, and he's about as grumpy as it gets. Whatever, anything. And then there's other guys potentially being talked about here. Luis Enrique of Spain is being talked about. Lopetegui is not going to leave Sevilla, it sounds like. Although money talks and anything can happen, I don't see that happening. The Mirror is reporting that Ten Hag was left stunned by the Red Devils' failure to offer him a contract on the spot. That sounds arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that sounds like anybody realistic in this game, but that's what the Mirror is reporting. So
I've interviewed. I had a good interview, therefore I should have an offer right then and there.
Jolly old the Mirror is reporting stuff like that. That sounds like a high school newspaper report.
Sounds like very 3-letter or 4-letter from over there.
No, it doesn't even sound like that. It sounds like a high school newsletter. Real Madrid are looking at Jude Bellingham, according to Bild in Germany, which sometimes they can be a little shady too. Not looking at him for this summer, though, because they've got other priorities this summer. They're looking at him the following summer for 23. Dortmund, not going to sell him right now anyway. It's going to be at least 100 million euro as a starting point to make this move happen. But according to Bild, Real Madrid are liking what they see in Jude Bellingham. So are a lot of other clubs. So that's not really a shock. Lautaro Martinez, even though he re-upped with Inter, Arsenal and Atleti are being linked to him, according to Calcio Mercato. Inter will sell if they receive an offer of 58 million pounds this summer. I'm not necessarily buying that number being that low. Inter will potentially be in a situation where they have to sell, even with guys they don't really want to sell. They're not in the greatest of financial shape, but feels like they could get more for Lautaro. So let's wait and see on that one. Brendan Aronson, Sky Sport Germany, still linking him to Leeds, wants to leave Salzburg. I think that's going to happen in the summer. I think they'll get it done. And according to at Wales Online, if Wales qualify for the World Cup, which they will know their fate in June, Gareth Bale, who's out of contract with Real Madrid at the end of the season, is thinking of signing a short contract with Cardiff City if Wales qualify for the World Cup. I mean, he's going to play somewhere, or at least he's going to train somewhere, or at least he's going to be under contract somewhere.
Might as well go home.
He's not going to sit at home. Like,
no, I mean home country, not like sit at home.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, John, he's going to be under contract to somebody because he's going to have to do something to prepare for the World Cup if they qualify. If they don't qualify, he might not play again. But if they qualify, yeah, he'll sign a contract somewhere. No shock. All right, what's the deal? Because you have notes that I don't necessarily understand with everything going on with Chelsea. We know that the plan, according to Rain Group, is a preferred bid presented to the government during the week of April 18th.
Right.
But where do things stand among the 4 remaining bidders?
Well, right now it is the folks at Rain have qualifiers when it comes to what they're looking for in a primary guy that is going to be their number one contender. It's got to be equity and debt funding, and in looking at a couple of the bids that we talked about over the course of time, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of debt funding going on, considering that the bid from, say, the Wies Boli Goldstein Group is $3 billion, and the loan that Roman Abramovich has said that was $1.5 billion. He's not going to pursue any kind of repayment for it. So I think the debt funding seems, part of the wording, but I don't necessarily think that it might be impacted.
They have debt. Like, yeah. I think like you have to understand how a club operates. Like, they have debt in general. It's just the way you run. You have lines of credit, you have things going on, but it's not related. I don't confuse it. The Abramovich has said, and according to all the reports, he's not seeking repayment of the loans he's made. But there is debt on every club everywhere. There's debt. So debt funding, yeah, is going to be part of it.
Then the other elements that are attached to it is price. And we've seen that these 4 probably aren't going to go over. Some of them don't want to go over 2, and a couple of them don't want to go over 3. The Wies Group has already said that $3 billion is too much. They won't go to that number, so we have to keep an eye on that. Future investment commitments, and that goes to the repurposing is not the word that I want to use, but just the renovation of Stamford Bridge, considering it seats only a little over 40,000, and to get it into the 60,000 range, or just to expand it, you're going to have to invest at least another $1 billion in that project over the top. And if you've made it to the top four, you're going to sit there and say, yes, we're going to continue to invest. It's not just going to be something where we're only going to invest the $2 billion. We're not going to invest anything else. So the future investment commitment seems to be a bit of a fait accompli, that yes, these four are going to continue to invest in capital improvements at Stamford Bridge. Speed and certainty of execution.
I don't know if all of the investment is going to be about the stadium, though. I think a lot of that is in the roster investment that will be a must to be competitive.
And there are 3 players that are at the end of their deals.
No, it's not about those 3. No. That has nothing to do with the purchase, John. What I'm saying is Chelsea's going to have to be a player.
Yes.
And for Haaland, for Mbappe, for these kinds of guys, maybe not those, Bellingham, they're going to have to be a player. And I think what Rain Group is saying in their assessments is that, yeah, you're going to have to show the commitment that you're going to go spend on these guys like the club has in the past.
Yeah, to continue
not just stadium.
Right. To continue the level of quality that Chelsea has brought on the pitch, quality of player.
You got to pay for it.
Yeah. And then speed and certainty of execution, that goes to the Ricketts Group as one of the examples where Ricketts has a past relationship with Rain Group with the transactions that they've done in the past. So having that kind of familiarity helps the Ricketts Group, as an example, to turn something very, very quickly. And the claims of each party having to be an appropriate steward of a prestigious sporting brand, which goes back to our discussion with the players and the investment, and making sure that what folks have seen with Chelsea on the international stage continues to be. And so right now we're down to the 4. It's the Vice Group, the Ricketts Group. Stephen Pagliuca is the 4th name that was brought in. He's an equity billionaire, owns the Celtics and Atalanta. And then the group that has turned into a consortium with Lord Coe, Harrison Blitzer, who have to divest of Crystal Palace if they're the ones that are chosen to be Chelsea. Vivek Ranadive, the owner of the Sacramento Kings, has become a part of this consortium as well. And Ranadive, if you ask fans in Sacramento about Vivek Ranadive, it is a far different opinion than those who look at the business aspect of what he's done with the Sacramento Kings. He's increased their value 4-fold in the more than a decade that he's owned the team, but he has garnered a reputation of meddling into the day-to-day operations of what goes on the court, overpaying for players, wanting to be engaged in the day-to-day. But since he's a part of a consortium, I don't necessarily sit here and think that he's going to sit there and say, you've got to keep Christian Pulisic, or I'm going to be mad, one of those kinds of things. But so Vivek Ranadive kind of got my spidey senses up a little bit, but considering his percentage, it won't be as large as I think folks would anticipate. His level of engagement has been with the Sacramento Kings. So it's Broughton, Lord Coe, Harris Blitzer, Vivek Ranadive, big consortium. Vice Boley and Goldstein, the first one that came public. The Ricketts Group that we know about, and the 4th one is Stephen Pagliuca, the equity billionaire with the Celtics and Atalanta. That's your Fab 4 that's chasing after April the 18th, right? April 11th and then the 18th.
I think one thing to be clear, the being an appropriate steward of a prestigious sporting brand is not the same thing as the investment commitment. It's judging what these people have done with their existing teams. If you have maybe said some things like one of the Ricketts family members have, that's not going to help you. If you have not run your team like it's a big deal, like the Sacramento Kings, then that's not going to help you. It doesn't mean you're eliminated, but you're going to judge based off what these others have done of a prestigious sporting brand. And that's important because that's where Chelsea is, and it's where they want to maintain. There's no point in them, accepting somebody who has a lot of money but has no experience or has bad experience in running a prestigious sporting brand. So they don't need to settle for that. They've got the pick of the litter here. They get to choose among a lot of very rich bids and they're going to pick the best one for Chelsea to be what Chelsea has been under Roman Abramovich. That's what they're going to do here. They're not in a situation where they have to accept, a lot of money, but from a more questionable owner in terms of experience. So that's where that stands. We will keep you posted on everything there. I was trying to pull up an article that is being difficult. We talked about Champions League and changes and growth and all that. They're going to go to 36 teams here in a couple of years. That's 4 new spots. How do those get decided? There had been an argument about a couple of those spots being reserved for those kind of heritage spots, teams that have performed well in European competition, but maybe didn't qualify the previous year. That is not going to happen, according to Martin Ziegler of the Times. We'll try to get a little bit more on that and continue to dig into it as we go. But that is where it stands right now. I don't know if they have decided how those 4 are going to get divvied up. Of course, like we mentioned, Scotland would love to have an automatic spot rather than have to go through playoff spots. So would many other smaller countries. We'll see if that happens. So stay tuned on all of that. Score updates in Asia. We're in stoppage time in the first half. 1-1 Syria and Iraq. 0-0 UAE and South Korea. Right now, that means the United Arab Emirates will go on to play Australia in a playoff. They're going to play the 5th place team out of South America. Those games are at 7:30 tonight. Peru clinch it with a win. They host Paraguay, eliminated. Peru has only lost 1 of their last 8 matches. Paraguay heads into this as the better team between the two, 23 wins out of 54 games between them. Peru is missing Andre Carrillo, who was injured against Uruguay on Friday. Miguel Araujo is back in training after having COVID. Paraguay is missing a bunch. So when you're looking at Peru being a favorite here, that's probably going up with Blas Riveros, Gustavo Gomez, Matias Villasanti, and Miguel Almiron all suspended due to yellow card accumulation. Peru is in the driver's seat in South America. If they slip up, Colombia has an opportunity. They've only won 1 of their last 8. It was the last one against Bolivia. They got to go to Venezuela. They've got to hope Peru doesn't beat Paraguay. If Peru draws and Colombia wins, Colombia goes through. Colombia have beaten Venezuela 25 out of 39 times. Colombia will be without Yerry Mina, who is recovering from an injury. Venezuela is pretty much at full strength. So full strength for Venezuela is not full strength for Colombia. Let's keep that in mind. But Joseph Martinez, Ronald Hernandez have an opportunity to play the role of spoiler this evening against Colombia. But Colombia needs help from Paraguay, which I don't think they're going to get. I think Peru's going to win that. I think Peru's going to get it no matter what anything else happens. But if it's close and Peru's sweating it, they've got to win to maintain it because they don't have a big cushion. If they draw, Colombia wins, Colombia goes. If Peru draws and Chile wins, then we're talking about goal differential, and that gets all kinds of chaotic. Chile lost 4-0 to Brazil on Friday. They've lost 3 of their last 4. They beat Bolivia. Everybody's beating up on Bolivia these days. Chile has to win. They have to hope Peru lose. They have to hope Colombia lose or draw. They host Uruguay, who has been dominant in this matchup. 46 wins in 83 games. Chile's won 19 of the last 83 against Uruguay. However, Uruguay qualified in their last game. How seriously are they going to take this? What is their lineup going to look like? They got a bunch of old fellas. They're going to roll the old fellas out again? I don't know. Ben Brereton Diaz, who is recovering from an injury, he's there. He's a doubtful starter, but I mean, Chile's got to throw everything at it. So if he can stand upright, he's probably going to be on the field at some point. I think Peru gets it done. Modiflow does bring up that Peru isn't great when they have to take initiative. It will potentially be on drugs tonight, Modiflow and Combo Ball. I'll tell you what puts it on drugs, because I could easily see this playing out as Peru getting a first half goal. They win 1-0 and everybody else is just watching and hoping and not getting anything. If Paraguay scores in the first half, that's where the drugs kick in, because then Colombia is going to see it and it's going to be nuts. Chile's going to have an opportunity to make up all the ground. It's going to be nuts. You've just got so many subplots here with Paraguay missing so many people, but they're stingy and difficult, and they're completely fine just being a pain. You got Colombia going to face their former manager and their rivals, Venezuela, who are not at the same level, but they would love nothing more than to ruin Colombia's day. And you've got Chile, who not that long ago, it looked like a foregone conclusion that Chile is going to go to the World Cup. And now they're the ones who need the most help. So, of course, Mataflo's going for ridiculousness. Chile wins, Colombia draws, Peru draws. Yes, that is what the Alfajores are going to predict here. I'm down for the chaos, but I just don't see it. Wildchar, I don't see Colombia getting it. What I could see happening there is a draw. I think Venezuela is going to throw everything at this. This is their World Cup final that they've waited for a long time. And they are going to make Colombia suffer. I just don't know if Colombia is good enough to win with their backs against the wall. It's a weird one where you could see the scenario where Paraguay says, all right, we're going to play spoiler. We're missing a bunch of people. We're going to be defensive and just frustrate the hell out of Peru. Venezuela does the same to Colombia. And Chile, against a team that just qualified and might still be hungover from the celebrations, Chile ends up winning and creating the chaos. That kind of a scenario could play out. Monoflo says Chile's looking like a zombie apocalypse. I think Chile's looking like the Syrian player who is trudging off the field right now, who was bleeding profusely from the head in the first half and has bled through his multiple wraps on his head.
Oh, wow.
And probably should not be in the game at this point, but, this World Cup qualifying, it just means more, right?
Yes, and we've had Korea and UAE finally went to the half after 4 minutes of added time. We've had 2 VAR checks in the first half. Both of them waved off. Both of them, one was alleged for a foul inside the box. The most recent one on the 48th was on an alleged handball. Well, both of them waved off. Goalless at the break. We have folks discussing their particular fondness for the decisions that were made with VAR as everyone is leaving the pitch toward the center F too. So second half should be interesting with UAE and Korea as well.
Did the VAR maybe make it more difficult for one of the teams? Or was it even in the VAR's displeasure created for people?
Let's see. The first one, actually, it was 1 each. So
okay, then he was even.
Yeah, so he was.
Or
even.
She was even. I don't know if the VAR is a male or female.
So it was even VARs in the first half.
Okay, then everybody should just shut up. NWSL, bad news in Kansas City. Lynn Williams has suffered a season-ending injury. I believe we're talking ACL here. You do have to start looking ahead. Acute injury in her right leg is what the statement at KansasCityCurrent.com is. She's going to miss the remainder of the 2022 season. If it's an ACL, of course, you're looking 9 to 12 months as a possibility here. That would hopefully give her an opportunity to be in contention to make the World Cup team next year, because we do have a Women's World Cup next year. It's going to be tough, and I hate to see this for Lynn Williams, one of my favorite players in the league. Suffering an acute injury to her right leg. Have not seen that kind of wording on one of these before, but that is the statement from the Kansas City Current. We haven't talked about the games in Europe and Africa yet. Just as a reminder, you've got games at 1:00 in Africa, at 3:45 in Africa, and at 2:45 in Europe. Let's start in Europe. North Macedonia at Portugal. The Prime Minister of North Macedonia has offered the squad €500,000 if they win today and get to the World Cup. That's not a ton. I mean, it's great. It's not a lot of money. Cristiano Ronaldo doesn't care about any of that. He says there's no World Cup without Portugal. I mean, the World Cup's going to go on if they don't qualify. They should qualify. They should be able to take care of this. They should go into pot one. If they win, they go into pot one. All these things should happen for the 8th best team in the FIFA rankings versus the 67th best team in North Macedonia. If you're feeling squirrely, SofaScore's got numbers on this at minus 500 for Portugal, plus 550 for a 90-minute draw, and plus 1,400 for North Macedonia to win in 90 minutes. I don't recommend feeling squirrely. I don't. Don't do it.
Not even the 90-minute draw.
No, I don't. No, I think Portugal wins this 2-0. 3-0. My gut was 3. 3-0. I think Ronaldo gets 2. I don't think it's a contest. Go back and look at the Italy game.
Oh, I know.
Well, then why do you think it's a contest?
I don't think it's a contest. I just think that North Macedonia is going to sit there and try to overly frustrate Portugal like they did Italy. Yes, I know that Portugal has far more.
No. They didn't really frustrate Italy all that much. Italy stunk in the attacking third.
0 offense. Yes.
No. They had offense. They didn't score. It's not like they didn't have shots and opportunities. It's not like North Macedonia played some amazing defensive game where they just frustrated Italy to no end. No, they didn't really. Italy should have won. Like, easily Italy should have won.
They should have.
So, but that's the point, John. You see games where a underdog plays good defense and doesn't give up many chances. That was not North Macedonia and Italy. They gave up a slew of chances, and they just didn't concede. Goalkeeper played well, but, I mean, Italy just stunk up the joint in the attacking third. It wasn't like North Macedonia limited the chances. They didn't. They got lucky. It happens. They got lucky. That luck's not going to continue against a better attack. Just no. And of course, Tom Cato, Italy shouldn't have been in the situation because that's why they didn't score goals and they were in the situation to begin with. Of course, they shouldn't have been there. But you have to be clear when you look at some of these games. Upsets happen. How do upsets happen? You get a team that plays over their heads. You get a team that parks a bus, 2 buses, 3 buses, whatever, and they just don't give up anything. Or you get lucky. North Macedonia got lucky. Italy had over 30 shots.
32, 5 on target, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 32 and 5 on target tells you all you need to know. Italy couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat in that game. Awful. Not North Macedonia great. Italy awful. Portugal beats them 3-0. I don't think it's anything. You're not getting your 500,000. You might need to bump that up, North Macedonia Prime Minister, to get these guys to play like maniacs for 90 minutes. They're going to try, but I 3-0. Poland, Sweden is a little more interesting. Poland is a favorite here. Plus 138. Sweden plus 230. Sweden is the higher ranked team in the FIFA rankings. It's in Poland. The 90-minute draw is plus 190. Zlatan Ibrahimovic is back for Sweden. Possibly his last game for Sweden if they don't qualify. Poland did not bring Swiderski of Charlotte in. There's been a lot of that conversation around it. I don't think Charlotte did anything wrong. I don't think they misled anybody. It was a hamstring injury. Everybody saw it. He didn't train during the week. They said return to play in 1 to 2 weeks. He played. Poland could have called him in. Poland could have basically risked a plane ticket. They opted not to. If they don't score goals against Sweden, well, then people are going to have another ish storm on Polish soccer Twitter. It'll happen. We'll see. Modiflow, I totally agree with you. You go back to the UEFA games in Portugal. They've got killers in the attack. Italy's disjointed up front. Totally agree with you. There's just no way. No way at all. So we will see. We will see where that goes. African games. The 1 o'clocks. Nigeria, Ghana, scoreless coming into the second leg. Nigeria hosting the second leg. They are large favorites, minus 118, plus 180 for the 90-minute draw, plus 400 for Ghana to get the win here. Last time these teams played in World Cup qualifying, of course, was the scoreless draw. They played in AFCON in 2014, and it was a scoreless draw. They played in a friendly in 2011. It was a scoreless draw.
So what you're saying is?
Well, I mean, it'll be a scoreless draw for 90 minutes, but somebody's going to the World Cup out of this.
Yes.
You just have to remember that Ghana lost to Comoros in the AFCON tournament in January. They lost 2 of their 3 games in the group. They lost to Morocco. They drew with Gabon. Nigeria won their 3 group stage games and then lost to Tunisia and AFCON. Nigeria at home has to take this. They have to take this. They have to take this. There's no way around it. Senegal and Egypt is the other 1:00 game. This should be a really good one. Senegal won the AFCON tournament back in February. They lost the first leg on the road against Egypt 1-0. They host the second leg. Senegal is a big favorite here, -110. Egypt is +300. 90-minute draw +200. 90-minute draw would send Egypt through. They are completely and utterly fine with that, if that's what it takes. Said they will defend like devils, Carlos Queiroz said, who's with his 3rd national team. I think 2nd. I don't think he actually signed anything with Iran, if I remember right. He started the campaign in Colombia and was horrendously bad. He might get to the World Cup with Egypt now. That final in AFCON on February 6th, it was a scoreless draw to all the way through extra time, went to penalties. Senegal won it. That would be enough for Egypt. They hadn't played since 2014 before that. So this is a tricky one. I don't know how this goes. Senegal's the team at home. They should have the advantage, but Egypt's got the 1-0 and they can defend. Just like we talked about with Dylan, how you get into these moments and things can get really weird. Like, does it get weird for Egypt or Senegal here? Does it get weird for Senegal in that they just can't find the breakthrough and Egypt is organized and takes care of business? Is it weird for Egypt that they give up a couple chances early and get really wobbly? I think the pressure here is really on the home team.
Yep.
And that might be difficult for them. I think Egypt finds a way to get through. I'll go with a 90-minute draw on that.
Right there with you. I was thinking 90-minute draw as well. I was thinking Nigeria gets it done, and I think that Egypt has a 90-minute draw and they go through.
It's Ricky. No. Nobody. Both can't go through in these. These are 2-leg knockouts. No. Didn't say that at all. 90-minute draw sends Egypt through because they have the 1-0 advantage after the first leg. This is straight up 10 teams enter, 5 teams go to the World Cup. The 3:30 games, Algeria and Cameroon is one of them. 1-0 to Algeria in the first leg on the road. They host the second leg. They are in a great spot here. +100 is their odds. They're the favorite. Cameroon's +300. Draw is 190. Winning on the road in the first leg, getting the second leg at home. Algeria's got to get this done, I would assume. I didn't think Cameroon was very good in the AFCON tournament that they hosted. They had some struggles. They did get fairly deep into the thing, but you had some kind of wobbly performances with Cabo Verde. You really needed to work to beat Comoros in the knockout round. You needed a lot. You lost scoreless against Egypt in the semifinal. You lost on penalties. You drew with Burkina Faso in the third place game and won on penalties. Not the strongest of form coming in. Algeria did not have a good AFCON, though. Keep that in mind. They lost to the Ivory Coast. They lost to Equatorial Guinea. They drew with Sierra Leone. So do they get wobbly with the lead, though? That's the difference between them and Senegal. Senegal's got to chase the win. Algeria's got to lead. They can be a little wobbly, just a little. I think they get it done. I don't think Cameroon makes them wobbly. Morocco and Dr Congo, 1-1 in the first leg on the road at Dr Congo. Morocco hosts the second. They are sizable favorites, -200, 90-minute draw +260. Dr Congo to win in 90 +600. 90-minute draw here would depend on the score line as to who would go through. If it is 0-0, then Morocco would go through on away goals. If it is 1-1, they go to extra time. If it is anything more than that, then Dr Congo goes through to the World Cup for the first time since 1974. I don't think that's happening. I think Morocco takes care of this. recent matches between these two. They did play a friendly in 2020. It was a 1-1 draw. They played in AFCON in 2017, and DR Congo won that. DR Congo was not part of AFCON. They did not qualify for that. World Cup qualifying, they had 3 wins out of 6, 2 draws, 1 loss. The loss was at Madagascar to get a level of where DR Congo is. Morocco, AFCON, win-win draw in group stage. They beat Malawi in the first round of 16, and they lost to Egypt 2-1 after extra time. I think Morocco gets it done here. I'm not too worried about that one. And then Tunisia and Mali, 2 fairly evenly matched teams. Tunisia got the win at Mali in the first leg, 1-0. Tunisia hosts the second leg. They're plus 125. Mali's plus 220. Draws plus 190. Mali is the 48th ranked team in FIFA. Again, you got the win on the road in the first leg. You should be in the driver's seat in the second leg. I think Tunisia gets it done here. I'd be surprised if they didn't.
So for me, it's Nigeria, Senegal, Egypt, 90-minute draw. I think Algeria gets it done. I think Morocco gets it done. And I'll go with Mali. I'll go with Mali making through.
Are you just picking them just because?
Just because.
Because, yeah, I don't think you have any explanation why.
No. I mean, just to,
Do you want me to give you an explanation why?
Sure.
Mali beat Tunisia in the AFCON tournament in January 1-0. That's your reason why.
Was that in Mali or was it in Tunisia? Do we know?
John, it was in the AFCON tournament, which was in Cameroon.
Well, then it was covered. Then it was in Cameroon.
It was in the finals of the tournament. It was in the group stage. 1-0 to Mali in that one. Mali was knocked out of the tournament when they lost in penalties to Equatorial Guinea in the round of 16. Tunisia also advanced from the group. They beat Nigeria in the round of 16. They lost to Burkina Faso. This could go either way. I could see a draw, a 90-minute draw, but I think Tunisia will advance. I think Egypt will advance in theirs. Nigeria, Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia are the teams that I am predicting to get through out of Africa. 1 o'clock and 3:30 are those. You got second half kickoffs underway in Asia. Again, Iraq, Syria 1-1, UAE and South Korea 0-0. If those scores hold, United Arab Emirates goes through into the playoff against Australia to play the 5th place team out of South America that I am predicting will be Peru. That is where it stands. We'll take some questions from the Twitch pitch to finish up. Get into anything you guys want to get into. I know there's been some talk about Atlanta United getting ready to play DC this weekend as we get back into MLS circles. Some talk about games that don't matter quite as much tonight. Argentina going to Quito to face Ecuador. Both teams are through. A little bit of a celebration for both. Questions on if Lionel Messi will start for Argentina. I don't think Scaloni has given anything out regarding his lineup choices. You got a bunch of friendlies and stuff today too. I'm not even really paying much attention to those.
What's your viewing path today? What are you going to be watching in order? How many screens are you going to have up at once?
No, I'm not going to have a bunch of screens up until South America tonight. I'll bounce around the others. Like I've got Syria and Iraq up right now because if Iraq doesn't win, then the other game doesn't matter. I've got that one up now. At 1 o'clock, I'll see which game is more interesting. I'll probably have Senegal Egypt up first. 2:45. Honestly, the European games I'm not all that excited about. If North Macedonia is holding on for a long time, I'll turn that on. 3:30 games in Africa. I will probably keep up with Algeria, Cameroon the most to see if Cameroon can make something of it. They're so inconsistent. They have the talent to make something of it. I just don't know if they can or will. So I'll check in on them. And then the 7:30s in South America, I mean, I will have Peru, Paraguay up as my primary because that's the most important one. If Peru does what they should, then none of the others matter. But I'll have the others up on smaller windows.
On Twitch pitch, going back, I know that you mentioned some questions that were out. The one on player availability from Thomas Jewin was looking for updates, particularly Aruju.
You have to understand, I said there won't be any updates. I answered that one in the Twitch pitch, but you guys have to know by now, this is kind of the cycle of how these things will go. There won't be updates almost always until Gonzalo Pineda speaks to the media. And then it's up to him how much of an update he wants to give. But that's going to happen depending on if it's a road game or if it's a home game. If it's a home game, generally he speaks the day before the game. If it's a Sunday game, a lot of times he'll speak on Friday. If it is a road game, he'll speak 2 days before, so the day before they travel. That's where you'll get updates. There's not going to be updates really outside of that. So that's how it's always gone. That's how it will continue to go. It's been Gonzalo's timelines. So just keep that in mind. Don't drive yourselves crazy about updates. Like, I know there isn't. Doug Robertson on Twitter said that Luis Araujo isn't training today or didn't see him out training. That doesn't mean he might not be available for Saturday. It just means he's not training today. You won't get an official update on injury recovery until Pineda speaks, and that's his timeline of when he speaks.
Then a follow-up with Pineda in the midfield. Now that Sosa is available, Thomas was wondering, will Sosa and Ozzy rotate or play alongside each other?
I think it depends on the game. I don't think you have a starting 11 that's written in Sharpie. I think you'll have some games where they will play together. I think you'll have some games where one of them plays. I think generally you can expect that at least one of them will be in the team almost always, unless both are out injured, because I think that's your sixes. But it's really going to depend. And you got to get Emerson Hyndman back into the mix. He's getting close. I mean, he's been training with the team at least a good bit. I don't know if he's doing full training sessions right now or not. I don't know if he could go 15, 30, 45, 90. I don't know if it's going to be with Atlanta United 2 first. That's kind of my expectation, just because, it's normally with a long-term injury, you want to get some game minutes under their belt first. So when that happens, we'll see. But you're talking about Alonso and Sosa as sixes. You're talking about Hosechu and Sejdic, who can play the six and can sit deeper. Ibarra can sit deeper. He can go forward more. So can Sejdic. So can Hosechu. You've got the possibility of Moreno or Almada slotting in as a 10, and you've got Hyndman coming back into it. So, I mean, that's a lot of different options. I don't think you will see one group play the whole time while the others don't. I think it will be more about form and matchups.
Tom Cato, in our World Cup discussion about player rosters, was wondering, do you think any of the European club teams will let players leave a smidge early for the World Cup, or any clubs for that matter?
I doubt it. I really doubt it. I think there's always going to be some situation where, yes, they will. Probably a player who is banged up, where they'll let him go a little early to get treated or get seen, which it doesn't really help you much. If they're not playing, like if they're a bench guy, then they'll be more likely to let them go. So for maybe some of the smaller national teams, that might actually help a little bit. But not if they're an important player. They're not going to let them miss a league game on the 13th, 14th of November and to be ready for a World Cup game in 2 weeks. They won't. I don't see it. I think it's 2 weeks. It's not November 7th. I think there's one more week that clubs can hold on to players. You do run into the situation on the flip side of it with guys who are big names and have a lot of cachet and a lot of sway in clubs. Are they going to be able to kind of force their way out a week earlier or so? Maybe, and that could happen in some. You'll get a lot of lobbying efforts back and forth. You'll get a lot of conversation about it. I think in general, you won't see guys released early.
Women's national team discussion, and was a comment from Byrne, because we were getting into the women's team playing Uzbekistan and the amount of folks that would be interested in that. Byrne says they need to play against top European teams, France, England, Spain, Germany, Netherlands, as often as possible, or maybe against top European club teams like Barcelona and Lyon. That would be cool. That he would watch.
You can't do the club teams thing, because when you can bring the national team together, the clubs are not playing, unless you do it as like a summer off-season thing for the clubs, which then it's preparation for them. It's not the same, but sure, you could do it then. You could do that this summer, but you can't do it in a normal international window. They do need to manufacture more games. Because look, this is where it's starting to catch up to them, that the European teams have more competition on a regular basis in European championships and World Cup qualifying than the U.S. has in CONCACAF. The U.S. really doesn't get tested in CONCACAF outside of Canada and occasionally Mexico. That hurts them in a big way. It's going to have a bigger and bigger effect. But also just the way the international calendar is going, and it's happening on the women's side too, there's not as many opportunities to play those games in friendlies against teams. You're going to have to make the She Believes Cup be a really difficult tournament for the U.S. It can't be a walkthrough to win the tournament. It can't be anymore. You've got to get the best teams you can possibly get, and you probably got to pay them good money to come, and the U.S. needs that. So, yes, that's something that's critical, or these other teams are going to get better by playing better competition, and they're going to start beating the U.S. women's national team more often.
Lower division question from Storm Chaser Kevin. He says, can you take just a minute or two and explain teams like Potros and Atlanta Elephants? What league are they in and how do they work?
Well, I mean, how they work is just their clubs. I think both of them, at least Potros has teams in different leagues, just like Georgia Storm has teams in different leagues, just like Georgia Revolution has teams in different leagues. I think Atlanta Elephants is only in UPSL Georgia. I think Potros is in ADASL and UPSL Georgia. I think they still have ADASL. And look, that's where it gets hard to follow at times with clubs like that, because these are small clubs. If I remember right, Potros started out of one of the Latino leagues and then went ADASL and then went UPSL Georgia. Atlanta Elephants started in the Caribbean League that became UPSL Georgia, that kind of merged into it. So they're local clubs. I mean, generally, I think UPSL Georgia is a really interesting project, and we'll see how it continues to grow and solidifies. And the more solid, the more stable it is, the better the level of play will get. Can it be maybe more of a year-round alternative to ADASL? Yeah, it can be. I don't think the level is as good across the board right now as it is in ADASL. I think it's getting close. And I think at the top, it's very good. But it's not across the board as strong as ADASL, but it's not as stable either. And those are the trade-offs, and that's the things you got to try to figure out. NPSL, USL League 2, the summer leagues are almost in their own world because you're bringing in the college guys. It's a short season. It's more high profile. You're part of, national leagues playing regionally in a national league, but it's a short season and it's not year round. What you're seeing more clubs like your Potros and Atlanta Elephants and other clubs like that, they're looking for year round play in UPSL Georgia and somewhat in ADASL. It's a longer season than NPSL or USL League 2, but it's not quite as much as UPSL Georgia. I think that's where UPSL Georgia is very appealing to a lot of clubs. But you're seeing teams you're seeing clubs enter teams in different leagues because of those formats. So it can get a little hard to follow, but these are very localized clubs that Kevin brings up. Very small, very localized clubs that give an opportunity for players to play at as high of a level as they can reach. And it's probably clubs, I don't know what their long-term aims are. I don't think they have the kind of operating resources to do NPSL or USL League 2 or anything more than that. But they're clubs that, again, provide their players a place to play. And there's some players who come out of those clubs and end up popping over into some of the bigger clubs.
Scoring update, UAE now leading 1-0 over South Korea in the 56th.
And that would make the Iraq result irrelevant. South Korea's been qualified. I don't know what their lineup is in terms of overall selection. UAE had to win to ensure qualification for the playoff. Sounds like that's going to go through unless South Korea decides they don't want to lose, because they have no motivation here to win this. I'm going to have to get you a TV in front of you, John, because I don't like talking to your ear.
Yeah, it's like it's like quick glance, and it's like on a break. UAE's on a break, and South Korea just
it's really not a good setup. We're gonna have to. We've talked about this before. Your setup needs to improve.
Yeah,
because I've got mine. I mean, I'm cameras right here. I've got stuff here, and I've got a game here. I'm not doing this the whole time.
It's like camera for me here, main monitor here, second monitor here, and and then obviously the big screen's off to the left. And so,
that's the problem.
And because the whole ear hole conversation,
it's not fun.
When I turn and you get to talk to my right ear for a while as I'm trying to take a quick glance at a match. But now that I've figured out StreamYard and can flip columns and actually answer folks in real time in the monitor in front of me, perhaps that second screen could be where I put the matches instead of all the way over to the left.
It's a crazy idea, but yes, that would probably make.
And yes, Tom Cato, I do need a right side monitor as well, but I don't have enough space. I've got about a foot to my right that remains on the desk where the current or the right.
Dead again. I have asked him to rearrange his whole office, so this didn't happen. It hasn't happened yet. But he's got the monitor space. I'm trying to nudge him into not showing us ear hole as much. Kevin said he hadn't heard about ADASL. That's the oldest one. ADASL started in 1967. It was it's one of the legacies of the Atlanta Chiefs. So you didn't have organized youth soccer or adult soccer when the Chiefs came. You didn't have any organized soccer, period. And the ADASL started as a adult amateur league, and really it predated Georgia soccer along with a couple of youth organizations. So it's been going on since 67. It's one of the oldest running adult leagues in the South. Not quite the country. There's a bunch in the Northeast that have been going on for a long time, some out in St. Louis, but ADASL has been around for a long, long time, and they've had some really strong teams over the years, and they've had some years where it's kind of dipped a little bit. I think they're in a good spot moving forward, and I'm curious to see if they try to have a little bit longer season. They run generally October through March, April. And I wonder if they try to stretch that on either side a little bit more and get more games with what UPSL Georgia is doing in the long run.
Burnt's asking, did any of you watch an MLS Next Pro game? What did we think of the level so far?
Yeah, I watched some. I kind of bounced around on them. I didn't stick on one game for 90. The level in these games, because these teams are all generally new and they're young, the level was disjointed. I think there's a lot of individually talented players, and the level on the team side will definitely increase because you've got a lot of talent. But you're putting young players who maybe don't have much experience playing at this level together and asking them to come together. So give it a little bit of time, but I think it was good. I think it's important for MLS to get that league right. I think it's not something they're gonna just throw out there and be like, whatever. I think they're going to really work at this, but it's not going to be the highest level straight away. I mean, nobody should have that expectation. That's an unfair expectation. They had to create this league when USL decided to go in their own direction and not have the reserve teams from MLS as part of their league. So MLS has created it. They've also created a youth structure underneath that on the fly when US Soccer got rid of the development academy. So that's a lot to take on, in the midst of a pandemic with MLS Next and then adding the pro component on top of it. That's a lot. There's going to be some growing pains, as you should expect. But I think the level of player that is being developed is higher than it's ever been, which will make these teams better in the long run once they get time to grow as a team. So I'm really curious to see where it grows. But first games, I was pleasantly surprised at the individual level for sure. Guys that I'd never heard of. And I'm like, oh man, that guy's a player. Okay, cool. Yeah, that guy can play. He's somebody to watch in the long term. The teams, it looked like teams that hadn't played together very much. And that's the reality. So I'm excited about it. I'm really excited to see where this can grow. I just hope all the teams take it seriously, and I hope the ones that don't initially get kind of forced to because they get blown out or they get embarrassed in these matches. I want them to take this seriously and develop more talent from their clubs, because I think that'll raise the level of the league as a whole, MLS Next Pro and MLS.
I watched the first match, watched Rochester going to St. Louis, and fantastic crowd at Herman Stadium. Over 6,000 were there for the return of soccer to St. Louis. Great atmosphere. And, seeing a match there, I just thought it was a great first step for St. Louis. Obviously, we mentioned independent teams like Rochester too, and I think the early discussion is that they want to have, I think, 40 teams, somewhere between 40 and 50 teams, one for each of the MLS franchises, but then the independents to go along with it. And for me, I'm going to be looking at a Rochester and the independents and see what their approach is in MLS Next Pro as well. That's going to be an interesting case study for me.
Yeah, and you've got Rochester right now as an independent. You've got St. Louis City too, which they don't have a top team right now. So, essentially kind of independent for a year before they become the true second team to St. Louis City. So you've got a couple of stories like that. I want to see next year how many more independent teams come in, what their approach is. Are they coming out of MLS Next clubs, like coming out of the youth club and adding a senior team to it? That's a really interesting idea that I've felt like more clubs should do. We'll see if more do it, or what that looks like. So I'm intrigued by the whole process, and I want to see it grow. More opportunities for more promising young players to play and play meaningful games. That's a good thing for American soccer. It's a really good thing.
Yeah, and through the weekend, I also buzzed through a handful of other matches in MLS Next Pro just to kind of see what the environments were and what the crowds were. I think it was the match in Houston against where it was Dynamo 2 and Vancouver 2. Caught a little bit of NYC and the Revs 2 at St. John's. And so I admit that I bounced around, saw the North Texas match at Globe Life. And so I bounced around to try to get a good gauge as to how it was being received in each of those home markets for week one. And I'll probably end up doing the same thing with eyes on, St. Louis to see if they can continue to have 6,000 every match.
Yeah, it's asking a lot.
No question. That is asking.
I mean, it just is. It's opening day, and it's a reserve team for a team that doesn't exist yet. I think they'll do well, but yeah, I think it's unfair to expect 6,000 every game. Setting that bar is not fair. Justin Merrim's checking in for Iraq right now. 1-1. They just had they forced a big save. UAE still leading 1-0 against South Korea. So UAE has to lose for Iraq to have an opportunity to get in with a win.
And that one is still 1-0. That one is in the 65th, halfway through the 65th minute, as well as I turn to my left quickly to get a timestamp.
Yeah, I got a faster thing over here in front of me, John. I got you.
Everything's faster from anyone else who interacts with me. Everyone else has faster ways of doing things. Trust me on that.
Don't have to turn the head. Yeah, it's right here. 66 minutes, 1-0 UAE.
Okay. So 66 minute, it's 1-0 UAE. There's your update.
Go ahead. What else we got?
Byrne, did you guys notice that the USL commissioner was at the Tampa Atlanta United 2's match with Darren Eales?
I did not know that. That's very interesting. I did not know that.
And Byrne finishes up by saying, unfortunately, the 2's didn't have a full roster for the match. It wasn't a good match. But it was a 3-0 win for Tampa in that one a week and a half ago? 2 weeks ago. I'm trying to figure out my schedule.
Not even a week ago, John.
That's right. Wednesday. It was last Wednesday, midweek. So not even, so 6 days ago is when that match was. Everything's running together. Here, I'll give you an example. That's my calendar.
Yeah, he doesn't put it in his phone, folks.
I do, but I also like the idea of marking things off and conquering the day. That's why I have it like this on a big desk calendar. That's my backup plan in case something goes wrong or I don't know how to access anything on my phone.
In case you don't know how to access anything on your phone, it's a calendar. It's literally boop.
Oh, yeah. But me entering things into the calendar properly.
That's where we started this conversation, John.
And that's why I have my big desk calendar.
Oh, my head hurts. Okay, so because of all of that and because you held up a giant desk calendar, you thought the Tampa Bay game was a week and a half ago?
Just like I said, although the matches run together, and so then you look back and it says 23 TBR 7:30. So 23 from 29 is 6. So 6 days ago. So there you go. 6 days ago is when Tampa and Atlanta United 2 played up at the Fraction. So there you go.
Yes, that's a fact. What else do we have, please?
We're caught up.
We don't have anything else. We have to end on that.
Apparently so.
Anybody, please give me something. Please, anybody. Yeah, I got nothing. Okay. I got nothing else. I'm broken at this point. No, it's not funny. It's really not good. Iraq is 1-1 with Syria. UAE 1-0 with South Korea. That's, again, sends UAE to play Australia in June. Then a couple days later, it turns around where Australia has to play likely Peru, but not a definite Peru. Those are at 7:30 tonight on Fubo TV. It's the only place you can watch those. ESPN Plus has your African games and your European games at 1 o'clock and 3:30 for African second legs, and at 2:45 for your UEFA World Cup qualifying playoffs. That's what we got. Ricky, that Wayne Rooney clip on WWE, that's like years old.
Yeah.
You posted.
Yeah.
That's completely years old. He was not on the most recent one because he's working these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very old because Wade Barrett hasn't been in WWE for a long, long time. I can't remember when that was. I remember it happening. I think Rooney might have even still been at Manchester United at that point.
I think you're right.
I don't think it was during his Everton stint, and I don't think it was when he was with DC. I think it was when they were in Manchester.
Yeah.
At one point. But yeah, it's very, very old. Very old.
But no, that was I mean the tell for me was Wade Barrett. But yeah, they did a large tour.
I remember it. It was old. I can't remember when it happened. Like when they've done those tours, Jose Mourinho's been a heel in the stands, and Rooney popped Barrett and talked trash with Sheamus, and they've had a couple of other soccer folks pop in on those European shows.
And
God, yeah, something Bad Bunny. Yes.
Yeah, because I was trying to remember who else it was that had popped in on those shows in the past when they make the visits, because they try to cater it to the town that they're in to try for the for the local hook and those kinds of things.
The WWE does that here all the time, where they'll have local, NFL guy or NBA guy or NHL guy or sometimes baseball guy. They just play all the time. So
get your cutaway of, hey, here are the Pittsburgh Steelers here in the front row, and they're there in Pittsburgh. You get the cheap pop on the Titantron and everything else that's inside the building.
Or your heel gets heat on trashing them, which also works too.
Yeah, exactly.
So there you go. I'll have to look back and see when that was. I don't think Wayne Rooney, Patrick, is on a WWE call list. I don't think he's quite to that point. There are people who are on that call list. Pete Rose was on that call list for a long time. There are a few people who get that call regularly. You'll see the same people pop up. Rooney's not that. I think it was just a confluence of location and person and availability that one time. He'd be funny to show up again, though. I don't know how much he would be into it. There's a few guys who would be really good in those scenarios. I think Zlatan would be hilarious.
Absolutely.
Zlatan would be hilarious on a mic. He would be very good as a bad boy in pro wrestling. That would work. There's others, but I don't know if Rooney's high on that list. That'll do it for us. World Cup qualifying all day. We'll break it all down tomorrow. Then you've got CONCACAF tomorrow. The U.S. just has to take care of the business in front of them and not completely fall apart. Hopefully, Montezuma's revenge has worked its way through this team, and they are in good shape. Don't drink the tap water in Mexico.
Bring your own.
You don't have to bring your own necessarily. You just don't drink the tap water. I didn't bring my own to Mexico. I didn't get Montezuma's revenge. You just have to be smart. And somebody wasn't in this case, and there's problems, it sounds like. So hopefully that's all good. I don't think it's bad enough to where you're going to lose 6-0. But that's tomorrow night. It's at 9:05. All the games will kick off at the same time. Mexico sweating it. There's talk in Mexico that if they qualify, which they should, they have a little bit shakier spot than Costa Rica or than the U.S. against Costa Rica, but they should. Even if they do, there will be meetings to determine whether Tata Martino will take them to the World Cup. That is not a definite. That could change. And Miguel Herrera is reportedly the one that would take them to the World Cup if that change is made. So all kinds of stuff going on in Mexico. Costa Rica, happy they've got an opportunity, more than likely preparing for the playoff. Canada, maybe still drunk on Molson's, who knows? They're down in Panama. All kinds of stuff. We'll talk about all of it tomorrow. Y'all have a good rest of the day. Mucho platiel.
Mucho platiel.